Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day, and we ask that we recognize that at our baptism you called us. You called us in ways that you are going to use us to lead others to glorify your name, that you will use us as channels of your grace and power the more we open up to you, that others may come to know you and be saved. Help us to recognize that you gave us that call and to be humble and in humble obedience to it. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, today is Friday of the second week of Ordinary Time. It is also the memorial of Saint Agnes, who is virgin and martyr. She's one of the saints in what is known as the canon of the Mass, which is the first Eucharistic prayer. And we look at we're going to look at an alternate reading here. There's a set of readings, but then there's an alternate reading. So the actual set of readings is for 1 Samuel, continuing that. The alternate set specifically for St. Agnes is, the first reading is 1 Corinthians 1:26 through 31. And I wanted to bring this up because this is so important. It really is. It's a powerful message of the gospel. It's a powerful message of everything that we know as people of faith, and it is essential. Now, I talked in the prayer about humility. Humility is a powerful reality. The more we seek to humbly know the Lord, the more we will know the Lord. If we are filled with pride, we will not know the Lord. I think I talked a couple weeks ago about it's kind of like a transistor, that a transistor is like a switch, and there's a certain amount of electricity that is put on. There's usually 3 leads in a transistor put on one of the leads, which turns on the switch for the other 2 leads. And if you don't have that little bit of electricity, the switch is not going to work. Well, for us, if we were to think of ourselves as transistors, which probably isn't, that might be the first time you've ever heard someone teaching your faith like you were a transistor. But anyway, humility is that little piece of voltage. That's it. Or put it another way, actually, was St. Teresa of Avila said, with humility, you can draw the Lord into your heart by a thread. Humility is essential. So if we look at today's reading from 1 Corinthians 1:26 to 31, you can see that St. Paul is writing to the people, obviously, in Corinth. And it says, not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. Okay? How many people do you know? So who am I? Who am I to do anything that the Lord would want me to? Who am I to be a servant of the Lord? You were called at your baptism. That's who you are. Yeah, but I don't have any degrees. That doesn't mean anything. I don't have, any fancy degrees. I don't have any fancy education. Doesn't mean anything. You were called at your baptism. You may have a greater wisdom than even some of the most educated people. Now, how can I say that? Well, look at it this way. If I were educated to be an engineer and you never made it past the 2nd grade, I wouldn't ask you questions on how to engineer the next model car or the next electronic circuit. I obviously wouldn't do that. But that's human wisdom, that's scientific wisdom, that's a different form of wisdom. That's really knowledge and everything else. However, I might have a different maybe I, as the engineer, have an idea for something completely, of something that the neighborhood needs, having nothing to do with engineering, and I come up with that idea, and you, as the person with the 2nd grade education, who also is a parent, who's got children, who's lived in the neighborhood and everything else, and, married a whole life, and you're looking around saying, I don't know what this guy thinks we need, because that is not at all what we need, and it's your wisdom that could transform this. I'm going to give you a great example of this. And as I was putting the show together, this is what I thought of. There was a priest speaking to another priest, we'll put it that way, make it very anonymous. And the other priest came from a parish that had the number 1 team, and it was always the number 1, and it was always number 1, and they worked really hard to be number 1. And the other priest came from a parish that had the number 4 team, and this is true, and it always was the number 4 team, and it never was more than the number 4 team, and that's just the way it was. And the priest who ran the number 4 team was talking to the one who ran the number one team, and he said, that's the problem with being number one, because once you're number one, you have to stay number one, and therefore it's no longer fun. It's an effort, it's work, it's everything in order to make sure you always stay number one. Whereas my team does this for fun, and they have a great time, but they're not trying to be number one. That's a form of wisdom. Now, you're not going to get anywhere on the Red Sox with that idea. I'm talking about parish teams. But you can see the difference. If you want to be the number one team, you have to work for it. And that's okay. That's fine. That's a great lesson. That's a great teaching. But once you understand that, now you have to ask the question, is our mission always to stay number one? Or is our mission to build community, to become, this was a Catholic team, to become a Catholic community, that we learn how to love and respect one another, that we learn how to be holy people, or is it that we sacrifice everything to be number one? That's a concept that comes out of wisdom. You don't have to have a degree in order to understand that. That comes out of that wisdom. And that's why we want to understand what gifts that you may have, even though you're not educated as an engineer or whatever the case may be. You have also gifts, and everyone does, and that's so important. That is so key. And always look at that every one of us has something to share in that reason. And that's what St. Paul is sharing in that particular letter. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. We want to thank you for being here, as we always do, especially if it's your first time or if you're coming back on a regular basis. We want to thank you for being here, and please share the message you hear. And if you like the message, please let people know, even if you don't like the message. And don't forget to send us some feedback. But I'm going to talk about that at the other side of the word we're about to hear. Right now, we're going to hear a quick word from our friends at Catholic TV. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. And don't forget our website, CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com, where you can check out our website, check out the archives of the show. You can listen to the Substack newsletter. You can also send us feedback. We'd appreciate that. You can even send us input for homilies. What am I talking about today? Well, I can't say anything about a homily. I can't give you input. I don't have a master's divinity degree. Please send me input for homily, will you? Let me know what you think. That's so important. That's what we're all about. If you give the wrong message, I'll know, and I'll deal with it as I have to. But understand that. Also, if you'd like to support the program, consider doing that. That's so important, because your support of the program helps the parish that is sponsoring the program. So that's really important if you consider doing that. There's a donate tab, or you can send us a donation at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. But all that is also over at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can connect to the parish as well. St. Anthony Alston.org. ST is Saint, or you can see the parish tab over at CatholicAudiomedia.com. So we're talking about, how you are baptized. Therefore, you have a message as well. You have something to share as well. And we talked about that in that interesting information with that priest who pointed out to the priest who had the number one team that you want to think twice. If you want that number one team all the time as part of a Catholic ministry, I'm not talking about the Red Sox here. It's kind of a Catholic ministry. You have to think, is the most important thing that you build a community or that you are number one? That's a form of wisdom. Those are the things you have to look at. Maybe you want a combination of both, but you don't want to have one at the sacrifice of another, unless it is all about what is the mission of the church, is drawing people into coming to know Christ. It's so important. I remember dealing with people who are so much into the number one, they have to be number one no matter what, that it was detrimental to the people on the team, because they were getting this we're going to win at all cost message, and say, well, wait a minute. Is that what we're all about? We're not all about that as Catholics. We're all about doing our best. I'm not saying that we're not, but we're also all about building that community and helping another. And that's a form of wisdom too. So we're talking about that important message. What kind of wisdom has God given you, whether or not you have 17 doctorates, or whether or not you only have a second or first grade education, or never went to school, or you have a sixth grade education? What has the Lord given to you? And how do you share that message with others? Do you know, I don't care who you are. I'm going to say one of the most important things you can do at any particular Sunday, and I've talked about this before, is to attend church. Why? Because you are communicating to everyone else at that Mass that God is important to you. That's a form of acting as a what do you call it? As a prophet. In a sense, you're saying God is important to me. That's a form of preaching the gospel. Remember those words, preach the gospel at all times. So you could be, we'll say, the best, I was going to say the word blacksmith, but maybe that's the best term, but the best car mechanic in the county. And maybe you know cars extremely well, but maybe you didn't even graduate high school. And you could be the number one professor of physics in the entire United States. Either way, if you're going to church, both of you are communicating the same message. God is important to everything you do. That's powerful. That's important. That's what we need to do. That's what we need to understand. So knowing that and embracing that and celebrating that and addressing that, that's what St. Paul is talking about, is to recognize that the Lord has called you, regardless of who you are, at your baptism. Embrace that. Know that. And you heard me say when I was talking about the website, don't turn around and say, well, I have nothing to offer that can be preached at Mass because I don't have a Master's of Divinity degree. Oh, please. You are a baptized Catholic. You may have an insight into something that I don't have. And maybe you're not even Catholic. Maybe you're a baptized Christian. And you might say, well, Father, you should talk about this. I know I'm not Catholic, but I think maybe you should look at it. Well, I'm going to listen to that. And I'll make the decision whether or not it fits, and it probably will fit. So think of that. You have a lot to offer by virtue of the fact that the Lord has called you. And if he hasn't called you, well, actually he has. He has. But if you haven't recognized it, then turn to the Lord and say, show me how you have called me. That's important as well. We'll talk more on Monday. In the meantime, have yourself a blessed weekend, and remember us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. In Cristo vivimos.